Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I'm joined by my co-host and producer, Holly Dechenes. Today, we're going to get a little deep. So this is kind of at the root of everything I teach, but we're going to hit on this concept of permission to be still. And there's an importance to that. I'm going to build that case. But yeah, it's just kind of like connecting to this deeper part of you that is untouched by the chaos going on. And this is what I commonly refer to as our center. When we're in the midst of all these things going on, we get pulled into emotions and thoughts. And it's just about being able to get back to that place where you feel grounded, rooted, and clear. A lot of these big reactions we have, they kind of hijack our nervous system. So, we're going to try and get to the bottom of that. It's a little bit like Eastern philosophy here, some spiritual kind of teachings. So hopefully some of you are interested in that. But yeah, so it's just a lot of the behind the scenes of a lot of the things I teach and why we're trying to get to that place. So you excited for this one, Holly?
Sure. I think this is a tough one for a lot of people, especially, in our American culture and how we attach value to busyness and achievement and goals and all of that. So I think it's a good topic. I also think it's great for you to give that window into like this is the basis of the work that you do. So I think that's awesome for people to learn a little bit more about.
There's just like so much static with life. We're overstimulated. There's all these things that can catch our attention. And, so many of the big pieces we continually revisit are, you're stuck in your past. We need to upgrade that. We need to shift out of that. We need to heal those patterns because, they have such a big experience to them. When I'm externally focused and there's something outside me that I don't like, that's my mind's job is to assign meaning to that. And my number one priority is to protect myself. So, if I've made judgments in my past that this is a bad thing, my nervous system is going to alert me of that. And so we get to build our story, we get to assign meaning to things. That's a very personal process. A big part of what we talk about is a lot of these things are just kind of default. They're things that were given to us by our caregivers and society and, just different programming. A big part of the culture you live in is important too. If you go to these, Asian countries, things are done differently. There's more of an emphasis on meditation and stillness and yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. All those philosophies are centered around this idea of dismantling the ego. And the ego is that protection mechanism. It's like I have a personality or identity, and I'm always trying to protect that. And so that's what a lot of our patterns are wired on is I'm trying to save face in every situation. We're trying to detach from our thoughts. We're trying to detach from our emotions. So when something's happened to me, especially in the place of, we'd call it a trauma. So that just means it was like a complex situation that happened to me that I didn't have the resources to move through that properly. So parts of me gets like stuck and fragmented in the past. That's where a lot of our struggles happen, is there's this part of us that hasn't matured. There's this part of us that still thinks at that level of consciousness. So that's going to be, if something happened to me when I was 5, my thought process around specific areas are going to be that of a 5-year-old. At that stage, we don't have the understandings of the complexity of adult life. So, we start to form a lot of these blanket thoughts, and then we also personalize them. Generally the child takes responsibility for the pain. So you make it about yourself. This is why most of us do struggle with self-worth issues is the chaos in our environment around us. We're personalizing it. We're making it about us in some way that we did something wrong or bad, or that we're not good enough. We start to tell stories based on those things. When we're talking about being still, the purpose of that is, and this is why meditation is so important, is we're trying to get to a place within ourselves that's like silent and still. Okay. Different traditions might call that like the God inside of us, or, this place where we're just clean. There's none of the programming that's affected the space in us. What we're trying to do is just get deeper into ourselves so we can like connect back in. When I say true self, we're just trying to get to this place where I can step out of the story. I can step out of those thoughts. I can step out of those emotions. And we get off track when we latch onto them. So when I say let go of something, that means like I'm having thoughts and emotions and I let that carry me away from myself. We need to learn to surrender those things in order to get back to center. These are a lot of just strategies we've adopted in order to stay safe. It's more of these things have happened. I've learned to cope with them in certain ways, and that's to survive. And a lot of times that's in play our entire life until we take a step back and examine these things. And the step back is like we're always trying to orient to a bigger picture, and that means we're trying to detach from that personal story we've internalized. When we get to the bottom of this stuff, this is how you make rapid shifts in your life is by becoming somebody new, is by shifting your identity from the limitation into this like more expanded vision. The thing is, when it gets set up, when I have these ideas that I tell myself about the situations and I've personalized it, now my mind is trying to protect that because I believe what's happened to me is like who I am. And when I believe it's who I am, now it's like my ego is trying to defend. It's that self-image. That's where I get these big emotional reactions. It's trying to keep that part of me safe, but it's like, but that's often what holds us back in life. That's often what stands in our way of growth is we have all these practice things that we've validated hundreds, maybe thousands of times of like, this is who I am, this is what's happened to me, and we identify with it. So it's hard to see any other way. Being still is when we sit with those things and we're able to kind of we're going to have the thoughts, we're going to have the emotions, those things are going to come up, but it's this ability to not attach to them mentally. So yeah, I can just have them and observe them and they're just going to float away. If I grab onto those thoughts and I keep building the story, now I'm practicing those old patterns again. I'm starting to make it more and more true for myself. So a belief is like something I've thought so many times that I don't even question it anymore. I just accept it as my reality. So if I'm going to change my reality, I need to make adjustments to that story so that I can see other possibilities for myself. And our mind likes to keep things consistent and it likes that predictability. Anything outside that box makes us uncomfortable because it represents the unknown. Okay, so if something's unknown to me, my mind is going to fill in the gaps about what that means. Okay, it's going to make something up and it's based on my past. So if I've had a painful past and I've had a lot of suffering and struggle and all these things, and those ideas are still in that same place, it's pretty much going to be impossible for me to see the bright future, right? Because this is so real that I don't think it can be any other way. And so when we talk about the pause and the step back and being with yourself and asking deeper questions, we're trying to get back to this part of you that isn't operating from programming. It's just silence. It's just this part of you that's standing still and it's always like waiting there for you when we step out of those things. When I go into meditation, that's what I'm doing is I'm taking my issues of the day or issues of the week, and then I'm trying to connect in deeply with myself to a place that's like still. I have something to measure that against the struggles. So this is like a place we could call it unconditional love. It's this part of me that's unaffected. And so I'm trying to bring that piece into my situations, right? So I'm trying to, okay, I'm seeing it this way, my ego seeing it this way, and that's causing stress, tension in my body. I got a negative story attached to it. But if I bring it back to this pure version of me, that starts to soften it. That's the more we practice this, the more we can get there. And the key at the end of it all is like, I can be in the midst of chaos, but I could always find my center. We want to try and get there because the more we get there, the more we build this track record of like, oh, okay, no matter what's going on, I can find peace within myself. Okay, so other outside things start to be less of a big deal because I know that it's just the stories I've attached to things. I know it's just the emotions I've felt throughout my life that are resurfacing. And when we're experiencing that, it's very real and it's part of who we think we are. But that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create that space and question it to be, well, yeah, if I want to be somebody else or I want to grow into something, part of me is I'm going to have to detach from those parts of myself. You've brought up the idea of ego death before, that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's like who we believe we are is often what's holding us back. And if we're going to upgrade, those parts of us have to die off. Okay. And that's the part of us that was built on pain, that we've learned to protect ourselves certain ways. And so when I go into the silence and I go into that space, I can find peace, right? And no matter what's going on, the world could be burning down and you have access to this. And so it's like getting to that place to be like, okay, well, yeah, like when I have that space, I can start to observe these situations differently, and I can start to detach from it, where I see it as like, there's things that have happened to me, and based on where I was at, like I saw it a certain way, but I'm probably in a very different place in my life now. I'm probably in a place where like I understand the complexities of being an adult. And so I might look at the same situation and be like, yeah, that doesn't really make much sense anymore. But if I'm just always giving into the emotions and the reactions, I'm just going to be operating on all these patterns over and over again. I'm not going to be able to make changes because that's what I decided was safe for me. That's what holds me back. That's where the fears start to surface, is especially if I've had some intense things happen, once again, it kind of hijacks your nervous system, where it's a very intense feeling, and you feel like you're pulled in these directions automatically. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to slow the momentum of that. We do that with being with ourselves, sitting in silence, being still. And then also when we're in that calm, centered place, we can start to look at these situations differently. We can question them. So when we talk about the prompting, that's just, I'm questioning my thinking to try and make it more accurate. Because if it was built on pain, that's a survival mechanism. That's not clarity. Okay. I've just, based on what happened to me, I drew conclusions from it. But if I zoom out, I can see other dynamics in the situation. We bring this up commonly with like generational family patterns, where, there's just a lot of things that were never questioned. So this is the way we do it, and we just keep passing it on. Whether that means, like immature, dominant personalities control the household and everybody else has to just people please, all that. I have to suppress my voice. I have to shut down what I want in order to stay safe in those environments. Those things are practiced over and over again because that's what's modeled for us. So when we say like true self, or, connecting in with yourself, that's all we're trying to do, is get back to this place that's not programmed by all the things that have happened to us. That's the importance of taking the pain out of the past, is so we can be more present. Because when we're present, we can connect to that pretty easily because our mind's shut off. It's not trying to protect ourselves. A lot of our thoughts are just reflections of what we believe. We're trying to dismantle those things, and we're trying to install new beliefs that are going to support this new version of you. A lot of that work is done in reflection. It's a lot of checking in with yourself. My process with clients, that's all. Hey, how does this make you feel? Because that's where we're going to find our answers. Is there's the ego that's activated and it's trying to protect you from something, and we're just trying to question it and soften it so that we can let that go, so that we create space for the new thing. So is this all clicking?
Yeah, I'm wondering a little bit if we could walk through an example of some sort. So makes sense to me in the family patterns, I would say super, super common, right? We are this religion, we go to this church, we have this hobby, we play these same board games every holiday, whatever it is. I'm totally making it up. Maybe we could walk through an example of like sitting with an actual thing, and then what it would look like to get to the other side of it.
Okay, so at the bottom of these things, I have this belief that I'm not good enough. That's going to express many different ways. It's going to show up in my relationships. It's going to show up in my career. In the career, I might have imposter syndrome, or, I might not take risks. I might play it safe because that's what I learned to do in order to stay safe. In relationships, I might have something in my past that I feel shame about, and I don't feel like anybody will ever love me because of that. I might sabotage things in order to prevent going deeper in a relationship. So this is commonly, we talk a lot as the relationship as a mirror, where it's reflecting back things to me and it's showing me the parts of myself that are unresolved. And so, this, when we're talking about the nervous system, it's literally just how you experience life. Everything I do has a feeling attached to it and has a story attached to it. And that's based on my life experience. But you could insert any situation into this equation. And so if you think about it, it's going to start to bring up feelings in your body. Some of us have learned to numb that out, so we're not really in tune with that. Okay. If we have a lot of pain, I've learned to shut down my emotions. And so I might think about something. I have this like pattern attached to it. I have this way that I cope with that stress, but I might not be able to get the information easily based on what my nervous system's giving me because maybe I've shut it down. We work through the feeling sensation or we try to wake it up, because that's the feeling sensation is the access point to what you've stored about this situation. I've made judgments about what happened to me. I've internalized it as it's a personal thing. I've built it into this identity that I have. Life transitions, I would say, are a good like indicator of like, okay, I'm here. I want something different, but everything I've lived in life has added up to where I'm at right now. This could be, yeah, I've been in a relationship forever, or I've been in this job forever, where when my desires say I want more, I want something different, but that automatically starts to trigger the doubts. It automatically starts to bring up whatever has happened to me up to this point. If I'm going to do an identity shift, and that could be meaning like, okay, you're in HR, now you're like, okay, I'm going to go into marketing or something, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there's all this data for what being in HR means for you. And there's like limited data about the marketing. Okay. So based on the continuity of like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while, I know how it goes. There's not a ton of uncertainty in what that is. Okay. But in that process, I start to make it who I am. Okay. So when we're like, a lot of the first time meeting somebody, we're usually like, oh, like, what do you do? Because especially here in America, we like all identify with our jobs. That's like a big part of our identity and how we have value. When I bring something into my identity, I don't really question it. It's just a natural part of who I am. When I go to make changes, it's difficult because like, I'm like running up against these walls of like, oh, this is who I believe I am though. If I'm going to make a big change, I have to like dismantle all this stuff. That's like very consistent for me. And so that's why we expose ourselves to these ideas of like, I have this desire. As I start to move in that direction, I need to get more familiar with what that means for me, because I'm shifting my identity into somebody that can do that thing or become that. Our ego, it's trying to just keep things consistent. So it's just like, that's what doubt is. That's what, the low self-worth. It's just, well, this is who I am. I don't know what this is. It fills in the gaps about our imagination, takes from our past, and it's just like, I'm going to make judgments about what that would look like. So a lot of times we like kill our dreams because we don't allow ourselves to go there in a clean place. I'm drawing all these conclusions to basically kill the dream before it even gets started. If I'm going to make this shift, I have to start to think differently. I have to start to see myself differently. The only way I do that is I continually reset. I'm confronted with my current reality. This is consistent. These stresses are happening. And I, at least, even if that's stressful, like I know what that is. When I'm trying to wrap my mind around this new thing, it's like I have to go get some information there so I can take that leap. And so when I go to take that leap, I'm going to be confronted with my past, which is like all the reasons why I shouldn't do that. It's my ego trying to keep things the same because that's what's safe. And, we see this commonly with jobs because it's just like, we need money and generally we see a job as how you create that money. It's hard to conceptualize like kind of shutting off that tap and trying to open up something else because there's not a lot of trust in that yet. We try to build up to create that trust. As we're going about this process, I'm going to be confronted with these things, and then the resistance is what's going to hold me back from moving forward. The resistance is our identity. It's who we think we are. We have to change that. And so every time we move in a direction and we run into a roadblock, I'm like confronted with my current beliefs. I don't believe this is possible for me, and these are the reasons why. That's why it's helpful to gather more information or like be around people that have made that transition or accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. is they kind of know what the path is. That helps ease the fears. Okay. But the fears don't allow us to move forward. A lot of times it's irrational thinking. Every time I bump up against a fear, rather than react to it and just go back to what's safe, I really want to confront the fear. I want to sit with it. And if I'm busy all the time, I don't have that opportunity. I'm just like going through the motions. And so when the fear surfaces, this is just a feeling. I'm actually safe. And that's why we want to create some sort of like calm environment, some like sanctuary for you where you like get away from the world and just pay attention to what you feel, because that's the information about your identity that's like not allowing you to move forward. When I'm calm and relaxed, I have a greater access to my subconscious. And so when I pay attention to what I feel and I take some deep breaths into it, I start to be mirrored like what I believe about it. Okay. So it's going to be telling me information about what I have stored in my body. It's getting to know yourself at a deeper level. When we get to know ourselves, now we get to ask deeper questions. But if I'm just operating on the surface all the time, I'm like, this is life. There's nothing I can do about it. When I take the time, I reflect, I go inward, now I can start to remake myself. I'm taking my current situation and I'm bringing it to this place of stillness. So I'm just trying to get to a relaxed place where I can be in my heart. I can allow the thoughts to surface. I can allow the memories to surface. I can allow the emotions to surface. And I'm just trying to take a step back and observe them and ask if that's true still, or if that still applies to my life. And what am I actually afraid of? Am I really worthy of better things? We start to see like, oh, well, like if my parents were just abusive, was that really me or was that them? Did I need to internalize all this like harsh energy? Did I need to internalize all these harsh stories about myself if it was just adults that were functioning from pain and stress? Right. So it's like I bring what happened to me into my identity and now I'm living based on an extension of that. So really the things I don't like about what I grew up with, I start recreating them because I've locked it in this place, right? They're just old tapes that keep playing and pushing me in the same direction. Okay. And so last week we talked about this permission to slow down. So the slowing down is to start to gain that awareness, to start to question it. Because these things have so much momentum to them, all we're trying to do is slow it down so that I can take that step back and see what's really going on here. And in that process, I'm learning about myself. I start to understand my motivations. I start to understand my wounds at a deeper level. And in that place, I have this like choice where I can make some changes if I'd like to. Is my pain really serving me still? Okay, so a lot of high performers, generally, they become great because they're built on this idea of not feeling good enough and need to prove themselves. But there's generally a point where it's just like, even if they've like come so far and they get celebrated and there's a lot of good things going on, they still feel empty inside. They still feel that feeling of not feeling good enough. And it doesn't really matter what they achieve. It always goes back to this place of like, okay, I need more. And that's the nature of the ego, is it just continues to feed the same system over and over again. And it's going to do that in increasingly greater amounts. And it's really kind of this like obsession with self. They kind of say it's just like, yeah, if you're feeling miserable and you're suffering, it's because you're too focused on yourself. The self you're focused on is the ego part, not the stillness part. Okay. Because the ego is like always hungry. It always needs more. But the reality is I can find peace no matter where I'm at any point in the day. I just need to step back. I just need to get back to a centered place. And rather than give into the big thoughts that are happening and the big emotions, I need to let those burn out. If I don't feed them, just like a fire, they start to burn out. I just observe them and I try to detach from them. And as I'm detaching from them, I'm trying to remove them from my identity. Rather than the story I told myself is who I am, it's more of like the story is what I believed happened to me, but like I can choose to see that in a way that serves me, that isn't going to keep making me miserable. This is very difficult, like high level work, right? Because these things are so powerful, they're so practiced, and these beliefs, once again, we've experienced something so many times that we've like validated it a million times, and now we're trying to prove it wrong. And that's a difficult task. We can get there if we always revisit this place inside of us that isn't pulled into that. Okay. Because whatever I get pulled into, I'm going to experience. And now I'm off running again. I'm off running again in the pattern. It's about slowing it down. And then as we slow it down, it's like I'm trying to take energy out of it so that it's not so impulsive. I'm trying to question it, soften it, disconnect from it. I'm trying to upgrade my wiring. And so I need to disconnect from the old pattern and I need to plug it into something better, which is something that's going to support my brighter future. The way I do that is I get to the stillness point. I get to this point of like, okay, I'm here and I can see these things now. And now I have this choice. Do I still need to believe that? Do I still need to react to it in the same way? But you're going to get the reactions. And that's why this idea of healing is I'm just trying to continually change how I see something to the place where it no longer has that pull on me, where I get back to this place of power and choice, where it's no longer a reaction, but I've just neutralized it. And so as I take something from that painful place, I do this process where I'm softening it, questioning it, trying to expand my perception and taking energy out of it. I'm gaining insights into all the different dynamics that happened in that situation. The self-knowledge piece is I gain wisdom, which wisdom's an emotional understanding of things that have happened to you in your life. And I say emotional understanding, that means like I've taken something from a negative place and I've turned it into a positive. If it's still in the negative place, I haven't learned anything. I just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. The negative energy, like it just continues to perpetuate itself. So I haven't actually learned anything if it's still in that place. The journey is back to yourself. That means I believe this about myself based on what's happened. I'm trying to return back to center, which is this place where that doesn't exist anymore. I'm basically dismantling it and dissolving it so that I can free up energy for the future. Okay. So I can move forward in this new way, uninfluenced by that past thing. That happens when we collapse the belief pattern, when it's like, okay, I have these reactions. I see that these reactions are actually sabotaging me or leading to negative results. And I don't want those anymore. I need to shift my relationship with whatever that is. And that's about seeing the situation differently in a cleaner way emotionally. In that place, I'm depersonalizing it, right? I'm trying to see it as like just something that happened, not who I am. Okay. So that's a big transition. But once we get to that's something that happened and I detach from it, now it's no longer my story or my identity. It's more of just like, oh yeah, that was like something I learned from. And based on the wisdom I gained from that, I can move forward in this new way. But I'm no longer being pulled to the past anymore. And that thing is a lot of people are always just like, oh, you just need to keep moving forward. Well, the flaw in that is like, well, you're just running on patterns, right? You're just staying busy. You're just doing the same things over and over again. You might express it slightly different, but you're going to be getting similar results over and over again. Okay. And so really any fundamental change is going to be through this relationship with yourself of depersonalizing your past so that you're freeing up energy for your future and who you're becoming. And every step we take towards the future, we're confronted with those aspects that don't feel like it's safe to go there. It's just this continual back and forth. So I go expose myself to a stress. I take that data, I bring it into meditation, sit in stillness with it, and I'm trying to transform it by seeing that situation differently. How would I see this situation through the eyes of unconditional love? If it wasn't personal to me, how could I see it in a way that makes me feel at peace with it? And as we climb that ladder, it softens the reactions. It softens my mindset about it. I'm no longer hypercritical. I'm no longer looking out for threats constantly. I'm able to come back to myself and be at peace. And in that place, I'm relaxed. And that's what confidence really is this ability to continually recenter no matter what's going on. And we do that, the areas we're the most confident in, that's like we've had the toughest training ground. We've had to work through a lot of struggles. And it's like something that through those hard experiences, we've gained the ability to trust in our ability to deliver results there. That means like, yeah, I could take a chaotic situation and I can straighten it out and realign it and get ahead in the right direction. Okay. So that's what solving a problem is. I've done this so many different times, so many different ways that I don't question myself anymore. I just know how to shift the energy of what's going on.
I think in the spirit of this idea And the fact that you mentioned last week, we talked about slowing down, which is the step in this direction. I think it can still feel pretty scary to think about, I'm going to sit in a place by myself and concentrate on this stuff. I'm wondering if you can talk about, it's not just the steps. It's not just like starting small. We've talked about that before. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe it's like 5 minutes and then it's 10 minutes or whatever, but it's overcoming even that initial resistance to it. Because it's one thing to like pause and then still move. That has a feeling attached to it versus a pause and now I'm gonna sit in it.
So a good thing to do here is we want to look for areas that we've been able to remake ourselves or some big shifts we have made in the past. And we want to look for evidence. Like, how did that actually happen? Right? It's okay, I was operating one way and then this happened. And then there was this big shift. What's the recipe there? How did I have to shift my thinking? How did I have to shift my relationship to things? And when people go to make changes, what they're saying, oh, I need to like prioritize myself more. I need to say no more. Well, they're trying to create this container where they can remake themselves. That's the common denominator is like, I might be just getting pulled in all these directions. And then I'm like, okay, well, I start forming some boundaries around my time and energy. And that's so that I have more available for me to get clear on what's going on within me. We've all done this in different areas to certain degrees. And so it is a process and it is like there's generally some reflection that's gone on where you've come to a decision of like, okay, I want to be different here. I want to do better here, or I want to change courses. It's just kind of reverse engineering that type of stuff where it's just like that is the process of change. Is if a train's heading in one direction at like 60 miles an hour, it first has to like slow down and then stop, and then it has to build up speed in the other direction. After a while, it gets going. So it's a good model to be like, if something's got a ton of momentum to it, okay, yeah, this thing, it's like I don't know any other way. It's been making me miserable for so long. It's it is just like pumping the brakes a little bit. It's like, okay, well, do I just keep doing the same thing over and over again and hoping I get a different result? Or do I start to slow it down? And as I slow it down, I'm starting to be more conscious about that process. Like, okay, like, why does this keep happening? What could I do differently? In that slowing down process, I'm trying to detach from this thing that's pulling me in this direction. Okay. But so it does have momentum and it does take a little bit to slow it down. And then you're going to hit this breaking point. That's the decision point of I'm less attached to that direction now. I'm more attached to this one, right? My desires are fueling me in this direction and it's stronger where I can start to get some momentum going in the opposite direction. There is a stopping point, and then that's the decision. And the decision's like, okay, I'm no longer doing that anymore. Okay, now this is where we talk about you kind of have to risk falling on your face. You have to risk being awkward and embarrassed or whatever it is, because when we're changing courses, I'm like saying no to everything I've ever known in that area. Okay. I don't have the data of the new stuff yet. Okay. So I need to be the ability is to like learn something new. And part of me learning something new is letting go of the old stuff. Okay. Because a lot of times they're in direct conflict with each other. So as I slow it down, I'm starting to get my bearings. I'm going to make this change. How do I build in this new direction? That's why commitment's so important. That's why, setting up your environment, because we want to be able to support the new direction so that you don't just go back to the old stuff because that's what's known. So we have to see the benefit in making the changes. We have to understand like why it's been hard for me to change. That's the self-knowledge piece of like, well, I'm confronted with so many unique, interesting situations that it's just like, well, yeah, like for that person, that's what was normal to them, right? There was like, that's what has momentum for you is the things you learned, even if they are destructive, even if it is chaotic. It's seeing that point of stillness is how we get the redirect. It's like, okay, I can stop that momentum by taking some time and questioning it, trying to see it differently to slow it down. And then I'm going to hit that point where I'm like, okay, I no longer see the value in this anymore. I can see how it's destructive. I can see how it's not serving me. And now it's just like, I just need to start to feed the new pattern. And once again, that's a slow process. Now I need to start to build momentum in this new direction. I'm just going to be easy with myself. That's the self-compassion piece. That's the understanding that it is going to be uncomfortable because my mind doesn't have the data yet. I'm off on a new journey. And so I have to relearn some things. I have to get new skill sets. I have to see the world differently through this lens of what I'm trying to become now. That's the thing is we don't become experts overnight. We don't become like the master at this overnight. It takes practice. Everything takes practice. It's time, energy, and focus. And then we want to do it consistently because that's how you get the momentum going faster. It's like if I'm continually engaged with something, now I can build that momentum in the new direction. But if it's just here and there, okay, well, like every time I get stressed, I'm just going to revert back to old stuff. So it's allowing yourself this runway to work things out and just knowing that it doesn't happen overnight, but we're trying to look for progress. We're trying to look, oh yeah, I used to think this way. Now I think this way. I used to struggle with this. Now I'm good at it. We look for the signs and the things that we've already accomplished. And we start to see like, okay, what was actually going on there? Like, how was I changing? And it's always like, it's an internal thing. We always think the circumstances need to change, but really it's like we change internally to change the circumstances externally. And so we all have things that, and a breakup is a big one, where it's like, oh, I'm used to this person being around and now they're not. Okay. Well, that's that abrupt ending. And now I'm like confronted with all these things that if I'm going to move forward, I have to get through those heavy emotions. Okay. And I think that's a common one most people have experienced of like, yeah, like the heartbreak, all that stuff, all that leads to us making tough decisions. What went wrong in that relationship? Did I abandon myself? Did I just like blend with the other person and I lost myself in it? And so that's how we learn is we have to feel the heaviness. We have to feel the big emotions to make new decisions, because otherwise, we just kind of stay in the same version over and over again. And, the people with the victim mindset, that's just generally they're not doing the reflection piece. They're not seeing their part in it. It's just always like all these things are happening to me all the time and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, when really it's like, everybody has a role they're playing. It's like you're creating these things in your life. You just might not be aware of it. Okay. And we create the awareness through slowing down, through questioning, eventually stopping it. And that's generally, we need support. We need outside point of views. And so, but if I'm like defensive, if I'm not willing to hear anybody, if I think I know everything, now that once again, we're not reflecting. And so I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Everything has this winding down process. It has the point where I hit the scales have tipped and now I feel like ready to go in this new direction. Really, it's that consistency to stick with that. So as I start to build momentum, I'm going to be it's going to be alluring to be pulled back into the old stuff because that's what I know, right? It's going to try and pull me back into that. And so I just need to continually refocus and build support for what I want. And, that may mean finding like-minded people. That might mean, people that can help you through that. But yeah, none of these things are easy. When we're talking about meditation and feeling these things, it's just like, well, on some degree, like we all do that in other ways that we're not conscious of, right? It's, we talk about working out. Some people, it's like creative writing or art or whatever it is. You're just trying to get in tune with yourself. Okay. I feel off. I'm going to do something to try to rebalance myself out. And as I rebalance myself out, I have access to better thoughts. Okay. If I feel better, I'm going to be thinking better. Right. But if I keep thinking the same negative thing over and over again, that just continually perpetuates itself and gathers energy. So it's about slowing things down, stopping them. Okay. And now I need to build momentum in the new direction. So how do I support that?
You've talked about it a few different ways, but I want you to talk about it just a little bit more, and that is the reverting.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about it, right? I can think about times in my life where I've made a decision. This is what I'm going to do. This is where it's going to change. This maybe isn't the best example, but just as an example, right? I used to train horses. That was my whole business. I did all of that every day and then was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. And went in a new direction. But And the reason this isn't the best example is because I did just have to cut it off and like literally go get another job and do something else.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking about situations where you make a decision and you're like, I'm gonna do this thing, and then something pops up in your life, and you revert back. And I totally get all of the comfort behind it, but that can be a really easy place to be like, oh yeah, that thing,
Hmm.
it actually didn't work, or maybe I don't really want it. I'm wondering about talking about like that piece of it, right? So we come to a decision, we make it, we're on the path, something happens, and we go back and then talk ourselves out of it or whatever.
Yeah. So it's going to be, there's not enough, I talk about the juice behind it. So like, I'm not highly motivated to do it, or I don't see like a big reward or payoff for doing it. Or it's going to be, I'm so locked in the past of like some painful thing that I don't allow myself to truly want it because I'm like used to being disappointed. And so there's different versions of it here. And that's why it's, the main thing is, yeah, sometimes we don't allow ourselves to go there, because we've been let down so much. And so it's just like, yeah, why try? I might say I want it, but like the bigger part of me doesn't believe it's possible for me to change or to move in that direction. That's kind of where we need that deeper work to heal some of that past stuff. And and we do that by going into it and learning about it and seeing that, hey, there's actually some benefits that probably came from that you're not even aware of. Because usually we just leave it all in this bad place and we just think the whole thing's bad. It's trying to find the wisdom from it. It's trying to gain the true experience of like, oh, this actually equipped me to do greater things now. And so it's those small things. Well, yeah, if I don't have enough motivation behind it, it's going to stall out pretty easily. That's why we get dialed into purpose and try to connect to something bigger, something that has enough that you're willing to take that journey and you're willing to stay on track. But you might not have a big enough goal. You might not believe in yourself enough to even like start off on that seriously. These are just like internal check-ins of, we need self-compassion. We need that. If I think this is what I want, and so I might try it out sometimes too. I might just be like, well, yeah, I'm going to try and wrap my mind around this. And if it pulls me further into it, now like I might be able to build that motivation, but it might just be like, yeah, that wasn't what I thought it was. It's allowing ourselves to be flexible, put things down. We don't have to fully attach and embody to everything. Part of it is that figuring it out stuff is just this trying new things, not taking anything too seriously until you zone in onto something that's like, yeah, I totally want to do this, right? So we just kind of need that stronger pull. And it is about being real with yourself of like, if your mind always goes to the reasons why something can't happen, we might want to we might want to unpack some disappointment. With your horse situation, that it hit this point where it's just like, I no longer want to do this anymore. But, we didn't like totally leave it there. We've talked about it, right? Because
Yeah.
there's unpacking of that past experience that was like unresolved. Okay.
Right.
And so it's like, if I leave it in that unresolved place, it's just like, oh, like I gave up on it. And I might be like, oh, I'm a failure because of that. Or we could be like, well, when we unpack it, we can find the gifts that it brought you. How do I bring those gifts into other things? Where I'm cleaning it up so that I can move forward more powerfully. But if I leave it in the disappointment or the failure, like those things, it's just like, well, yeah, nothing ever works out. Like, I'm not good enough, whatever. We could go into those places that don't even allow us to generate new desires. Okay. It's just like, I'm going to settle into my life and because I don't believe I can make it happen. But if we can start to string together these experiences and being like, oh, it's all actually adding up to more. I've just left some aspects of it in a negative place. And I just need to clean those up where I'm detaching my identity from the disappointment or the failure of it. I'm freeing up energy to bring to the new thing. Okay. So it's just that we might be a little bit muted. There might be a lot of static in the way. And that's why we go into the past, is because there's locked energy away there. And we might be able to channel that towards the new thing. So it actually creates the juice for it to flow. But it is case by case, but that's part of like spending time with yourself and reflecting is we're trying to get to the bottom of what you really actually want. And there might be some false starts. There might be like, oh, I thought I want this, and then that wasn't what I thought it is. But that might be some good data. That might be like, but I did like these aspects, right? So like, what's a better version? That's the playful energy of like, early on, I don't want to take things too serious because I don't want to kill it. Like, because if I put too much pressure on it too fast, that might extinguish the fire so that I don't have enough to power through, the obstacles and roadblocks that naturally start to surface. I would say the abrupt endings are often like the easiest when we're like, oh, like, well, I have no choice but to move forward. It's the little stuff here and there where it's like, I want this. And that's the thing is like, by and large, like many of us live comfortable lives, like relative to people in previous generations, right? It's like, even if you're struggling today, it's probably way easier than it was back then. Those breaking points are powerful because that's what like leads to big changes in new decisions is like when you have to change. And that's what they say. Like a lot of people get kind of stuck in that purgatory of like, well, things aren't so bad. I could probably stay here for a while. You don't have anything that's like pushing you to grow. So a lot of people just start to settle in there.
We're going to leave this conversation and you had to be like, here are my top 3 things about being still. What would you say?
It's always available to you, even if it's uncomfortable to get there. Sometimes it's your reset button. All these things in your life have these patterns attached to it, and you're pushed and pulled in these different directions. And it is our best decision making is from this calm, centered place. And it might take a little work to like work through the resistance to get to that. But it's just finding things that make you feel good. It's finding things that can pull you out of stress. It's finding things that can clear your mind. Doesn't have to be this big thing. I love meditation. Most of my clients don't meditate, right? But I'm like bringing the wisdom from what I've learned through my meditation to my coaching, right? So the important parts is we're just trying to see deeper layers to ourselves, and we're trying to take things less seriously. Because if it's this is who I am, this is all I am, I can't change it. Now we have nothing to work with. But it's about detaching and softening. But it is about finding your reset button, finding something that you can go to that makes you feel a little bit better when you're feeling down or stressed. Exercise is a powerful one, but it could be listening to music. We talked about it last week. It's just like always, like we all have these things that interest us or that excite us or that kind of take us out of that serious mode, and it's about connecting back there first so that we can bring that perspective to the stressful thing. Okay, when I'm in the stress, like that's all that I'm seeing. If I'm able to get back to having some fun, being lighthearted, now I can approach those situations differently. And that's a big part of what we talked about last week. The stillness is always there. And so it's just getting to know yourself. And the more you know yourself, the better you can design your life. If I'm building my life based on just what was given to me, that's what I call default. I have all these buried motivations that I don't even understand. And I'm giving into my impulses and just doing whatever. Right. But if I slow it down, I can start to be more conscious about that process. I can start to get clear on who I am. And then that's where I start to discover what's true and authentic for me, what I actually really want. And then it's about doing the work to realign with that. That state, it doesn't have to be positive thinking. We just want to get to neutral because neutral is the stillness and it's where we're present. So we're just trying to, how can I be more present? What connects me to the present moment? And once we get there, that's the best place to look at the things you're struggling with. And that's in my client work, that's all I'm doing is I'm showing up neutral, and it's just like, say whatever you want to me and I'll help you work through it. Because I'm not emotionally wrapped up in it. That's the main thing here is we are, through our thoughts and our emotions, we get pulled into things, and that's what disconnects us. That's what makes us feel miserable. That's where we suffer. That's where we have these negative opinions about ourselves. How can I see this situation in a way that serves me? How can I see it in a way that feels better to me? And so it is, and it's resisting the impulse sometimes. A lot of times, like we don't need massive action. A lot of times we just need to let some old stuff burn off. Okay. So that means spending more time, when I feel triggered, I just slow down. I just take some deep breaths. I don't react to it. I just let it burn out. That's the unlearning process, is I'm just letting the old fires die out. I stop feeding the pattern with my actions. Okay. Cause my actions are going to support whatever's happened to me. And so if I can take that time to recenter and be like, well, yeah, is that really the best course of action? If If the answer is no, and it's usually always no, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to feed that same pattern because like I want something different. It's that slowing down, getting your center. And when we're in that centered place, now we approach the problems and we try to see it through a different lens, one where all of our stress and pain isn't activated. And then we just try to see a better path forward. And these are incremental adjustments. We take slow steps. We try to, hey, what's something that's manageable for you now? Because all these things have momentum to them. And all we're trying to do is slow it down and then slowly build into a new direction. And so I think adjusting your expectations of timelines is super important. That's the number one thing is we don't know how long something is going to take. A lot of times it's more of just being at peace every step of the process. And we can gain that through spending some time, shifting our mind, getting connected back in. And so that just means I'm just trying to connect back to joy. I'm trying to connect back to optimism. I'm trying to connect back to possibilities. And so I might need to let some of this old stuff burn out before I feel empowered to move forward, because these things are very practiced. And that's the self-compassion piece, is like a lot of times you don't even have a choice because it's just so familiar to you that you don't know any other way. But if it's not giving you the life you want, if it's making you miserable, we probably want to take a different look at that and be like, well, yeah, does this have to be this way still? Or is there something I can do about it? And that's where we step out of the victimhood and we start to be more empowered towards a new action.
If anybody's interest has been piqued in terms of working with you, let's talk a little bit about best places to find you, ways to connect, all that sort of stuff.
If you're interested in this work, you can go to my website, brandonthielk.com, and you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session. So I get to know you a little bit better and share how I can help. I might offer some tips to help you move forward. And also, if you wanted to register for my newsletter, it's on the same homepage there. So every Monday, I'll send out some tips for the week, some reflection prompts. We're always talking about prompts here, updates on the business and the podcast. And if you want to follow along on Instagram and YouTube at Brandon Thielk and TikTok at bthielk. So I post out there pretty regularly with content similar to this. And yeah, so we're moving into the new year. So I'll be putting some new stuff out there. So be on the lookout for that. I'll keep you updated in the newsletter and socials with that.
That's great.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right. Talk to you later.